So it should now ask for permission. If you can grant that, that would be great. All right. So welcome everyone to the AI and Academic Integrity webinar. We are going to be looking at how AI tools and academic integrity policies interact. Joining me today is Dr. Karen Lang. We'll have a chance to kind of go into what each of us do, but I just want to introduce Karen Lang. I also want to introduce Dr. Kandy Mink Salas. She's the Associate Provost for Student Success, and her area is academic integrity. So it's good to have the authority in this room to be able to speak into some of the questions I'm sure we'll be getting about this. So the plan for today, so we're going to try to cover about 45 minutes-ish worth of content, and then we'll have a 15 minutes worth of Q&A, and then we'll have a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for a small group breakout session. And the breakout sessions is really intended for you to take some of the content that we've shared and then be able to process and maybe experiment with some of the things that we talked about in the small group breakout session. So that's the plan. So, but I'll let maybe Karen introduce herself, and then also Candy introduce herself, and then we'll get going.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you or be with you here today in Zoom. I am back at APU after 8 years away as the kind of directing the writing program lead instructor. And so we've teamed up, Mike and I, on a lot of these. I think it's our 4th workshop maybe, and the conversation is on the move. So I like that we're at this point. So I'm going to be talking today about conversations with students and how to navigate it and maybe prevent a little bit too. So I'll be up later in the session.
And hello, everybody. I'm Kandy Mink Salas, Dr. Kandy Mink Salas. I serve as the Associate Provost for Student Success here at APU. And one of the areas of my responsibility is working with our academic integrity programs. What that means is that I maintain our policies and procedures related to academic integrity violations on the, again, academic side, not student behavioral issues that might come up on the student affairs side, but when a student basically plagiarizes or cheats or in some other way doesn't maintain academic integrity in their academics. So I maintain those policies and procedures. I can consult with faculty, department chairs, deans on these cases. And then as I'll explain a little bit later, there's a procedure by which a student can appeal the decision of a faculty member, department chair, and dean. The last level of appeal is called a grievance process, and that involves a panel of students, faculty, and a dean. And I coordinate that process and chair that panel. So I do get involved in some of the most complex academic integrity issues that we have on campus.
Thank you, Candy, and thank you, Karen. All right, and then my name is Mike Truong, and I am the Director of Faculty Development here at APU. My area basically is working with faculty and providing resources and training on various things from basic classroom sort of pedagogy to teaching with technology to nowadays seems like my job as an AI consultant for faculty. So we're going to get going. So let me go ahead and advance the slide here. So these are the questions that we'll try to address today. What are APU's policies related to AI and academic integrity? I know we've been pushing the resources out from time to time, but there's still a lot of questions about like, what are they? Where can I find it? Things like that. We're also going to talk about the tools that you as the instructor can use to detect AI-generated writing, and some of the, along with that, the caution that really we need to have when we use these tools, because they're not 100% reliable, and there are going to be situations where these tools really need to be we use it as one point of data as opposed to just the conclusion, sort of conclusive kind of point of saying this is yes, AI writing, generative writing or not. And then finally, we'll provide opportunities to have conversations about when you start the investigation about whether it's a violation or not, what are some of the things to consider? And that's where Karen will speak into that. And then we'll have the breakout session. We have a series of tasks that hopefully will help you apply some of what we will talk about today. So with that, let's start with what is generative AI? I know that many of you have been in our previous AI sessions, whether it's in person or online, but there might be some of you who are maybe brand new to this. And so I just want to maybe give some background information, and I'll try to kind of get through some of this. But so generative AI is the new sort of type of technology that allows the user to generate quote unquote original content. It could be text, which is most of what we'll talk about today, but it could also be things like audio or video or images or even data coding. And so and most people have heard of ChatGPT, which is in the top left corner there. Like that's the tool that oops, maybe I don't want this one. This is sort of the category of tools that most people are familiar with when they hear about AI. But there are many, many other types of AI tools that are out there. And depending on the discipline you're in, you may be dealing with other types of AI at work. In terms of the AI chatbots, these are kind of the bread and butter tools that a lot of students are using when they are sort of looking for help in their assignments, or this is sort of the new way that their new study buddy who can provide them many, many answers to things that they need. And it's a simple thing. It's sort of like if you know how to text, like a common phone text, you can use this technology. That's how simple it is. You basically put in a question and it will spit out the answer. Or you can ask it to do things like write a story, or here's a question, well, how do I answer this? It will then be able to kind of give an output that will help the student. So these are kind of technologies that I think are going to become more and more pervasive. Just in terms of the tools we use here at APU, like we use the Google Suite. I think sometime next year, Google Suite will have the AI built into the suite. So when you start a Google document, the AI tool is going to be right there next to it. So students, it's just a matter of using that tool, and then the empty Google Doc page will automatically start populating. Things like Microsoft Word, like the whole Office suite, also will have the AI bots built in. Starting, I think it's already available now if you kind of use the enterprise tool. So again, this is just the beginning of the many, many ways that AI will intervene in our lives. So in terms of our policy, so I will kind of just highlight. We will provide the slides for you, and then we will also, along with the slides, all the links in here you can click through later on when you view it. So you don't have to worry about taking too much notes, because everything here that we're presenting will be available to you. I also forgot to mention that we actually have another handout that accompanies this webinar. The handout will go a little more into details of the things that we talk about, because obviously in our short time, we're not going to be able to cover everything in depth. So the handout really gives you a lot more in depth. You can dive into actually the sources of where we got some of this data, and you can read articles about these technology and so on. But the APU plagiarism policy regarding AI usage. So this has been a process that started back in, I want to say like February. And then we worked that through. If you were involved in the studies council, or if you're involved with your department, like we had hundreds of faculty speaking into this along the way. We had like 5 open conversations. We had many, many constituents speaking to it. And so I think by summer, this was then forwarded to the provost office, and then it was sort of blessed, and then now it's kind of available at the provost website. So if you look in that URL, you can find the full policy. But just to give it to you in a nutshell, the UR and the UG, the undergraduate and the professional policy, basically has this little phrase: it says students may not use without prior permission. And we go into a little detail and examples in the policy, but that's the sort of the basis of this policy, is that it gives the faculty the ultimate say in whether or not students can use these tools in the classroom. In the next slide, I'll give you another kind of caveat of like sort of the different use options, like no use, some use, or full use. And then for the graduate, it's similar. I mean, in the graduate policy, it basically again says, if they use these tools, they have to use it with permission from the faculty. Otherwise, if I know, like for example, honors college, all the courses in honors college do not allow their students to use these AI tools at all. Not even like a writing assistant tool like Grammarly. And so it's one of those things that really you have to, as a department or as a school, if your dean or your chair doesn't have a policy, then you have to kind of put that in place for your own course. These are the three options that we provide as just a template. I mean, for each of these templates, 1, 2, or 3, we actually give you a little paragraph language you can just copy and paste into your syllabus, and then you can modify according to what you're comfortable with. But essentially, these are sort of the 3 levels of AI uses, and there's no use, some partial use, and full use. And if there are questions about this, we can kind of get into that later. But this is very, very critical, because one of the challenges that we will talk about later in terms of how to do the investigation piece later is, if you do not have a policy in place in your class currently, then in some ways you have not protected yourself as a faculty in terms of what students are using or not using. And so if they go and use this and there was no policy in place, their simple defense could say, you didn't say anything, that's why I used it. And so that becomes sort of a tricky place to be, because then you're trying to now figure out, like, how do I backpedal, or I don't know. There's some of those things that we can talk about, but that's very, very important. Just another resource that I want to highlight here is, so Karen and I did a workshop a few months ago on assignment makeovers, so that some of the current assignments need to be tweaked so that it makes it less prone to AI compromise. And so I think, again, we have available resources. That this particular webinar was also recorded, so if you want more information, you can go back and watch that particular webinar, where we actually go into depth and give examples of the different assignment makeover options and strategies for that. All right, so I breezed through that because I know this is more the policies and the sort of dry stuff. So let's kind of get more into the meat of what we're talking about today. So these tools that I'll be talking about are what they call AI detectors, AI writing detectors. So I'll start with the one that we have inside our LMS, our Canvas instance. Most of you, I believe, are familiar with sort of the SimCheck, or it's a Turnitin tool. Turnitin is the parent company. SimCheck is the particular version of the plagiarism checker that we have at APU. And if you create an assignment inside Canvas, there's an option to choose SimCheck for the plagiarism review. Sort of on the very left-hand side, you see that little option. When you use that, when you enable that, then when a student submits a written paper assignment, that assignment will get a score. Like what I have in there in the middle column, the little red, it'll show a score, a percentage of how much that paper has content that is found somewhere else online, or maybe in the database itself. Like, let's say, because our particular instance of SimCheck actually has all APU paper that's ever been submitted. So it's able to run against all previously submitted papers, as well as any content on the internet and databases that Turnitin subscribes to. So I think it's a fairly comprehensive and robust knowledge source that it's checking against. But nowadays, like as of, I think maybe June, I can't remember exact, May or June, Turnitin added another feature inside SimCheck, which is called the AI score, which is what you see on the third column, on the right column. And when you click on the similarity score, which gives you the next page, underneath that, the similarity score will show you an AI score. And the AI score is the score that's attempting to estimate how much of that essay submitted was generated by AI, chatbot, like a ChatGPT or the Anthropic's Claude 2. I mean, there's many of these models out there. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on, is sort of this particular AI score. One thing to remember is that this technology is very, very new, and its reliability is just, I mean, we don't have enough years of experience to kind of say like these are like reliable percentages or not. And so when you look at that AI score, you have to really, I think, consider like, the newness of the technology, and also there's some unreliability that comes with that. And we'll talk more in our Q&A part. I'm sure there's going to be questions about what percent of an AI score do you start really questioning whether you should talk to the student or start the formal process of reporting this or not. So along with the SimCheck that we have inside Canvas, there are also independent third-party AI detectors. And these are detectors that are free. Most of them are, I think, free for like there's a free version. And then if you want a more like a long, like if you want to upload like 20 pages of content, that you might have to pay for that version. But the three I've listed here, the GPT-0, Zero GPT, and Originate.ai, they have free versions of this. You just go to the website and you can just copy and paste paragraphs of what you think might be AI written, and then it will kind of give you a score similar to what you see inside the Canvas SimCheck. Along with these AI detectors, there are also other technologies that are what I'm calling AI writing removers. And basically what these removers do is, let's say a student enters the writing prompt into ChatGPT to get the essay back. If they're smart, they will take that output from ChatGPT and they will put it into one of these AI writing removers, which will then essentially, quote unquote, clean up that text so that it won't be as detectable by the AI detector, if that makes sense. So it's like I don't know, I call it cleaning or washing the AI writing so that the machines no longer could detect it. And this is something that, I mean, we are actually now on the second generation. So now there's second generation AI writing detectors that detect writing that's been removed. And then there's also second generation AI writing removers that detect removed writing, it's going crazy. So just to let you know that these tools and technologies exist, as students can technically get some output from like GPT, put it in one of these remover, and it will decrease the AI score dramatically, or it could even go to 0. And so it's just something for you to be aware of. All right, so in terms of the cautions, and this is the part where I really need to emphasize, because it's a new technology. There are so many unknowns, and the very nature of what we're trying to do with this kind of technology in academia, like we're really just sort of, it's the wild, wild west in terms of how do we even regulate or how do we go about discerning what is a true academic violation and what is not. And all these things I think are sometimes unclear in the stage of where we are in the sort of the life of this technology. So the first thing I want to first example here is that AI writing detection tools are not entirely reliable. I'll say this again because it's that important. AI writing detection tools are not entirely reliable. Case in point, OpenAI, which is the creator of ChatGPT, has shut down their own AI writing detector because it said it just had a very low accuracy rate when it detected things. I mean, imagine this, like the very company that created the GPT can't even detect their own machine that generated the content. That tells you a lot about how this technology, it's very unwieldy, because on the one hand, you think, oh, it should be easy if the company who created this machine that can generate like original text should be able to detect it, but they themselves cannot. What they found was that these detection tool, like this particular, the AI text classifier, it gave a lot of false positives. I mean, there are cases where like they were trying to do these tests where it's like, here's the AI writing, here's human writing, and then it gave the human writing like an AI score. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? And so that's just a very important case in point of how this is not entirely reliable. The AI-powered writing assistant tools can also trigger AI detectors. So you are probably familiar with Grammarly. I think most people know this. I mean, I use it almost on a daily basis. Most students I've talked to use it. There's some classes that actually recommend or require the use of Grammarly because you don't want students to submit papers with misspelling and poor punctuation and things like that. But nowadays, Grammarly does more than basic spelling, grammar, and punctuation. It can now do things like summarize, paraphrase, and analyze text. And that's where some of these tools are not just quote unquote assistants anymore. They're actually becoming authors of writing. And so there's also another tool similar to Grammarly called Quillbot. Quillbot is a more modern version of Grammarly where it does all that basic spelling, grammar, punctuation, but it also does a lot more of that AI stuff. I mean, it can literally take your entire research paper and it will analyze it and tell you, okay, here's the part where you need to, it's not clear. You write this paragraph or your methodology is whatever. And it can give that kind of feedback in a way that is more than just a AI writing assistant. And then there's also another tool called WordTune. There are many of these tools. These are kind of the most popular ones out there, but there are just literally like dozens of these tools available to students, and most of them offer a free version. And if you want more features, then you pay for it. All right. A third caution is that writing by non-native English students can trigger AI detectors, which is, I think, an interesting kind of revelation. There's been a couple of studies. I'm just citing one here from Stanford. So these detectors were what they call near perfect in evaluating essays written by US-born 8th graders, like the native writers, the fluent writers. But these detectors were consistently misclassifying the writings of non-native English students as AI generated writing. So there's one statistic, a remarkable 89 out of the 91 TOEFL essays. That's like 97%. 97% of the TOEFL essays were flagged by at least one of these detectors I mean, first of all, I think these tests were like actually handwritten in the classroom. Like these are, you go to a class and you do your test. So it's not like the students could even access the tool, but yet it triggered like when they did this study, they took those essays written, the TOEFL essays, and it triggered 97% of those essays. So it's a very, very problematic thing. And a lot of it is, the reasoning is that most AI writing are very generic. I mean, they usually use like a subject, verb, object kind of structure, sentence structure. And I think most students who are non-native fluent English writers are, when they're learning a new language, typically use the basic sentence structure too. And so if you do that consistently across, then you will also, you will be detected as an AI writer because that's the structure that AI uses. And so that's some of the problems that come from that. So there's lots of studies. There's been at least 4 or 5 studies I know that have addressed this in a very in-depth way. But I just want to highlight that. So here are some more articles about the issues related to detectors. And my last point here maybe is there have been a number of universities that have come to a point where they've actually turned off that AI detection There's probably, I don't know, at least a dozen universities that have done that because they don't believe that these detectors are reliable enough to be used in a meaningful way or effective way. And so they have actually turned that off. So they don't, like, even though the Turnitin has that feature, they've asked Turnitin to not turn on that feature for their university. We are not yet at that point at APU. We're kind of more, okay, so this is how I'll explain it in this way. We believe that this AI score provides one of many data points that faculty can use to determine whether or not there is a violation of academic integrity or not. And so we're not going to sort of throw out, quote unquote, the baby with the bathwater, because it may be just one indicator, one point of reference, and but there are many, many other things that we need to look at, and that's where I think what Karen and Kandy will maybe talk about later is that we don't want to take this tool away from our faculty, because having this tool will give faculty an important source, of determining, but it shouldn't be the only source. And I think that's where I think we stand currently at APU as an institution. So let me stop there for a second before we go to the next section, because the next section is where Karen talks about what's the approach to conversation. But any questions up to this point about what I presented, either the APU policy, the tool itself, and some of the cautions related to these tools? And you can either raise your virtual hand or you can put it in the chat, and then we can, let me see, let me look at my, oh, wow, there's been a lot of chat here. Hold on a second. All right, so I see a JR says, how best to approach the situation of a student would seemingly copy paste content as part of an assignment submission. I'll leave that to Karen in her next, because I think she will address hopefully some of that. But there was no percent sim check. Okay. So there's a question. This is just a direct message to me. This person uses sim check, a student last term who turned in a questionable paper, but there was no AI percentage option. Yeah, like I said, this tool, the AI score, wasn't turned on till the summer sometime. And so if you had something like in spring, you may not have that AI score. So, and then, is there anything else here that I missed? Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions before we move on? Okay. All right. So Karen, you're up.
Okay. Well, this part of the session, I have some hesitancy in, I guess, in some ways, even though for 20 years I've dealt with these issues and I come from writing studies. And so this was part of our graduate work. This was part of assignments we did, to prepare for the work here. But I think for me, it's also a very personal way that we approach things, and it matters on our relationship with students. Do we teach online? Do we teach in person? Is it a first-year student or a senior about to graduate? And so I saw the word tiresome in the comments, and I think some of our very first sessions on dealing with AI and the disruptions in January, I was saying, engage our emotions on it. This is asking us as faculty to kind of revamp our assignments, and it's unpaid compensation, it's extra hours. We start to build up almost an adversarial, or I'm watching you, spy versus spy, like one person said in the comments. And we don't want that relationship with our students. It hurts our teaching and learning. It minimizes our job satisfaction, our sense of purpose and calling in some ways. So in all these ways, I'm saying you may need to personalize this to your approach. But I think my first question when I got handed this question was, what do I do in conversations? I think I've known for 20 years what I do teaching writing classes in journalism, but I haven't made it very public. It's something that we haven't had a lot of trainings on. When these things pop up at the most inconvenient time, when you're getting ready to post grades, and all of a sudden you got 10 hours of work to do to investigate a plagiarism case before you can post your class grades. These things are very frustrating. And a lot of times for me, it feels deflating. Oh gosh, I taught my heart out all semester and now I've got this, right? So it can be very personal. So in review of our session, we talked about engaging the emotions for us around it. This is at the heart of our work. thinking about how might this be an opportunity to revamp and revisit our values, like to have exciting classes, to not rely too much on a discussion board or simple paper prompts. And in my field, we've spent years looking at how to plagiarism proof our assignments. So I've in some ways been prepared for this, but not at the level of the, it being a button on Google. But, do I have control of the slides, Mike? If you want to move to the next one. So these are a little bit text heavy for the sake of anybody going through them on their own. But one of our sessions that we talked about, for me, my premise and my theory coming out of writing program administrators, where in July, I spent a lot of time with my colleagues in the field talking about how do we tackle this? How do we deal with it? And for me, my ongoing theory on it is to really start the conversations way earlier than, is this a violation? I have spent the semester making AI and AI practices very visible in my classroom. And so on every assignment guideline now, I have AI policy right there in front of the students. When we talk about the assignment class, we talk about it. I say, hey, this one is really important on your personal voice and style. You can't use Grammarly because the way you say it is also something you're getting credit for. And they're like, oh, okay. What you say, you're getting credit for that on your analysis paper. And so I don't want you to brainstorm in ChatGPT. If you do, you need to cite that brainstorm. Okay, I want all the original thinking to come from you. I want to know what you're coming up with. So we have these conversations. I've made it really visible in every assignment. They have to talk with me in a post write about where they thought their voice came through. What do they think their strongest idea was? What did they do in their writing process this time? What will they do differently next time? And so one of I think the best tips we've given along the way to today's conversation is really emphasize process. I wonder a little bit about like saying, yes, use Grammarly. I want the students to know how to have great style on their own without the tools. If we're too product focused and not process focused, it becomes really easy to have AI do the work for them. So reworking research questions together and telling them, where's your first, where's your second, where's your pre-writing, looking at multiple drafts. I know this takes more time. Honestly, you don't even have to read it all. There's a measure of we are watching. Sounds parenting, but we're watching, and that if they know we're paying attention and they know we care, that we talk about it a lot, that it's important to us that they do original work in our class. I think it really I have not had, unless I'm being suckered, I have not had an incident of AI violations, and I teach writing 1. And partly the real trick has been I've required Google documents. And so they create a PDF out of their Google document. We run it through the check. I check for the numbers, the reports, but then I have a Google history. And so for any that are questionable, I look at their history and see if it's been drafted like a natural writer would do, or if there's swaths of copy and paste. And so I just today reminded them, hey, Google Docs, remember, I need to see your writing process. We're in an AI world, y'all, and I want to make sure I'm promoting honesty and academic integrity. And so for my midterm, I actually had an essay question on academic integrity. What should first year students know about AI? When is it okay to use it? When is it not? Why wouldn't you? And why would you personally? And some of them quoted Mike on the last point on this slide, don't outsource your learning. They're like, I need to learn to think critically. I don't want a machine to think for me. So we had a real conversation about, and I said, what values are your reasons? And we talked about it for our whole second session. I wait till everybody's hopefully in the class when ad drop is settled a little bit. And we spent the whole class time having a debate, listing ways to use it, times in our class when we would and wouldn't. So I think you guys get the point. Make it really visible, talk about it often, show them that you're savvy and you're aware of these things, that you're not like somebody who doesn't know this is going on in life. Okay. So, but knowing their writing process in their proposals, why do you care about this? For smaller assignments, even adding a personal element. So all these things are in the revamping the assignment. I haven't run into issues this semester. So that's been it. Sorry, Mike, one more. Sorry, I jumped to the bottom without. But I think for me, the most practical tip might be really clarifying what no AI is. I think this workshop might have been birthed out of a colleague saying, I have a student paraphrasing it and she thought that wasn't AI. And for me, it's super practical. I think Grammarly and the more tools they have, I mentioned it to my students. I said, you guys, do you think this is? They're like, oh, I've used the paraphrasing tool. I didn't think that was cheating. And they're sincere. So I think clarifying what is AI, get contents for what you said, how you said it, or go ahead and use it and polish it. I want really clean drafts. I'm going to be product focused. Okay. But there is a reality for us that learning and writing is collaborative. They're taking ideas we said in class. They're in their peer groups talking about things. They're looking at an idea from their discussion board. And so we want to promote collaboration. We don't want work done in isolation. but I'm always trying to create this ethical bright line of, so when is it somebody else is starting to help you too much, or when is someone else authoring it? So we talk about what it means to be collaborative in our class. And if we think of AI as a tool, they're thinking, I'm collaborating with AI. This is like sitting in a peer group. So I would have those conversations. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to them? And for me, I define collaboration with them, at least the writing program does, on this idea of things can inspire your ideas, but if it wasn't in your head to begin with, cite it. And I teach them a high calling of academics really expects you to cite everything, and so if you use ChatGPT for your brainstorm, go ahead and cite it. If your professor allows that, use it and cite it. If they don't allow it, don't open it up. So we have these conversations and trying to define inspiration versus doing the labor for you. If they're drafting, if something is drafting for you and you're not the author, then that's probably cheating. It's more than collaboration. So defining these kind of terms, I gave those as examples. I really do think that we need to have the conversations where we connect AI violation scenarios to long-standing familiar concepts. I say, just like you wouldn't have your roommate write your paper for you, you can't have ChatGPT write it for you. When your if you slide the keyboard over to your parents when you're home on Thanksgiving and they start writing, not okay. You have to maintain authorship, the singular paper, singular name on the paper. So I just relate it so that they know. And if you want to stigmatize it, if you're not open AI use in your class, I say, you wouldn't buy a paper, you wouldn't do all of these things are academic integrity issue. And what does it mean to have integrity? We talk about these things. So there's a lot of teachable mentoring moments, but I think if we associate it with prior knowledge of what plagiarism and cheating is, it really helps a lot. And then also, these policies are wonderful. I think as faculty, we wanted them day one in January when we got back in spring semester last year. It took a little bit longer to do some good policy, but students really need us to have the conversation not in syllabus speak. When I talk with them and the light goes on, it's more when I say, hey, what's the academic labor? What's the currency, the sweat equity you're putting in to create this assignment? And what are you getting credit for? Look at the rubric. Is it you or is it a machine? Words like authorship, I think, help a lot. I've said it a few times because it's becoming a buzz phrase in my class, but you can earn credit for what you say and how you say it. I would clarify that with your students. Mine's a writing course, journalism courses, communication courses. I want to know their style and I want them to develop it. And so we say, don't outsource your learning. But I think the other thing we've talked about in the last week, I don't have it on the slide here, but it's more of a heart-to-heart moment. I started thinking about why do students do this. In 20 years of being a professor, it's often when they're overcommitted, too many classes, they've got a lot going on. But what my students are telling me lately is they feel a real pressure for this academic formal tone that their professors are wanting. And so they would rather have ChatGPT do it and feel like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be, instead of me saying to them, hey, you're a learner. Like, I didn't sound like my academic writing self my first year. I got better my junior year. By the time I got to grad school, I was a lot better. I still struggle sometimes because I'm a journalist. I'm a conversational writer. I talk to them about writing identity and learning identity that we're on the move. They feel a lot of pressure to be perfect graduate students first semester of college. And so if we can talk to them and honestly check ourselves on what we're expecting in the level of their writing and tone and style and ideas, we need to address the pressures that are causing it. So that's a side note that I've been thinking about, just dealing with a few heartache moments for students this week. So start the conversations early, but if you have to have the conversation itself, I'm leaning, for the next slide, Mike, thanks. I'm leaning more into like kind of communication studies world. My husband is a trained investigator. I ran this by him and he had a lot more strong arming techniques from his federal agent status. I'm like, we're not doing that. Okay. But I do think it doesn't hurt to be savvy, shrewd as serpent, innocent as doves, and really having the student's heart and learning in mind. When we go in there, we can be really frustrated. I have had to, in my own busy schedule, really designate times to have these conversations, so that I know I built in the wiggle room. Expect to need to address some of these at this stage. There's so many every semester right now that you need to set aside some time and plan on having some conversations with students wherever it fits into your schedule. I suggest any tough conversation, we communication scholars say, don't do it by email. Like, have a conversation, get on Zoom, ask them for 10 minutes. I just want to talk to you. Maybe you don't tell them why, but you say, I need to talk to you about your assignment. Some nervous students who use AI will bug you about when grades are due. It's not always, I don't do false positives. They'll be like, when are you grading that? When are you grading? Because they're nervous about being caught or not. And so I noticed that trend among students, but I think it's always great to say, hey, can you tell me your process for this submission? And, you know, were all of these your ideas, or did you get any inspiration from anywhere else? Can we talk about it? And so I gave you all these examples. I wouldn't do all these questions and barrage them, but I would choose a few that matter for your assignment. I've asked some students, hey, did you remember to cite any ChatGPT usage? And they're like, oh, wait, you know, and one student said, I didn't use it. We talked about it. But have the questions ready and just open up the conversation. A lot of times just asking. My 2 plagiarism issues last semester, the student folded upon one question and confessed. Okay, and I wasn't looking to do that, but I tell them, even if they're, I imagine the innocent student in front of me, I tell them, hey, it's my job to check in with you. This is what academics do. We check on each other. We check our sources. This is part of academic life. This is being in a discourse community. So we talk about it. And so I destigmatize the fact that they're being called into the principal's office. It's kind of what they feel like. And so, sorry, Mike, next slide, if you don't mind, sorry to direct you. But something I talked about on this one, this is my last one, is really think about your own rhetorical goals when you set the conversation, time and meeting. And I tell them, hey, this is due diligence. We're going to talk about this because this does seem questionable to me. And I just want to build some understanding is always a great conversation goal. And I say, my goal is to clear up any concern or have you tell me anything you need to tell me. Okay, and just invite that kind of almost like, you know, heart-to-heart moment. And so a couple of times I put the policy in front of the student and say, I just want to make sure you know this. Can you tell me how you upheld it? I think you did. Can you tell me how you upheld it? And just see how they do talking about it. And then I think at this point, if I'm going to talk policies, and I want to hear from Kandy and everybody on it, but from my field, what we are saying, the general on balance, the stance is unless the student confesses, you may not be able to punish them or hold them accountable. And I gave you a couple other things on the end of this slide, but I have been defaulting to, hey, do you want to go ahead and clear this up by rewriting it and resubmitting so we can both feel good about it? If you don't want to, you know, and we move on from there, but I invite that, okay? We may not want to imply penalties unless they confess, or there's overwhelming evidence that they broke the policy, or they can't provide required evidence. So just like Mike said, hey, have your policy so you're just protected when it comes to the conversations. I would put some requirements in place. The Google Doc drafting for history has been good for me. Multiple steps in any assignment. And also even for a discussion board, like tomorrow, my students are putting a discussion board post up in Canvas, and I'm going to have them turn it into a PDF to run it through the checker and also post it. I know it's extra steps, but honestly, if 30 of them do it, and I don't have to do the ones that are suspicious, I think it's working smarter, not harder. But so just having some requirements in the process to really have their voice, their ideas, different ways of reporting, and being willing to revamp our assignments and slow down our teaching time and our talking about the assignment to include making this conversation really visible. I think knowing that we're watching goes a long way. Knowing that we care about their learning and being process focused and learner focused kind of heightens us and calls us back to our values in teaching and learning, to not get into the rote assignments that are just too easy to do with AI. And that's it. And then I think you have the link on how to cite it. I keep putting this into assignments too and showing students, reminding them like, hey, you can use it on this one. I want you to look at this as a model, like see what ChatGPT does with the assignment and then do it yourself. I remind them that if they end up using some of the ideas because they like them, just make sure you cite it. So that's a good practice to do. For me, that's information literacy, whether it's ChatGPT or an academic source, the practice of citing ideas that are not their own. Thanks.
All right, at this point, I'm going to stop sharing screen so that we can have more of a Q&A conversation time. So I know we've thrown a lot of content at you. So if you have a question, maybe raise your virtual hand so that we can have like an order to how we're asking the questions. And then also you can use the chat to add your questions to the chat as well. So what, how are you responding to these, to the content so far? I see a thumbs up from Janet, so thank you. We appreciate the affirmation. Kandy, did you want to add anything about the conversation that faculty should have with students in these cases?
I sure do. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. One of the things I wanted to point out, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Michael, but I believe that when faculty use the plagiarism and AI checking tools, we can turn those on in Canvas so that the students are seeing those scores as well, correct?
Not confirmed. I originally thought the same as you did,
Mm-hmm.
but I recently came across something that says only the faculty view can see it. I need to go back and I need to kind of go in as a student to see if that score is actually visible, but that not sure.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
sure.
So let's double check on that. But
Yeah.
one of the tools, let me just say that I really want to echo everything that Karen and Mike have said, and Karen in particular talking about having the conversations on the front end of the course and the educational experience is critical. And just speaking, treating this as sort of normalizing it, that this is a conversation that we're all having in our higher education culture right now because of the rise of these AI tools, and that we don't mean to demonize them, but we just want to clarify when it's appropriate to use them and when it isn't appropriate to use them, and then explain your philosophy. I really like the approach of explaining to students that, especially if you are using a policy of I don't want you to use AI or very limited use of AI, to explain that it's because your goal is their learning. And if they're relying on somebody else to do the work, then, in classrooms, I've been known to say, then what are you paying for? Or what are your parents paying for? If you're having somebody else do the work, then you're not learning. So helping them understand that. I love the comment, Karen, about students who think the goal is perfection. I think that students saddling themselves with that perfectionism is real. And I would even say that's a bit of a gendered issue. I think young women in particular, carry that burden. And so helping them know that the goal is not perfection in the writing, the goal is improvement. And that the only way you can judge their improvement is if you know where they are and then where they've come in the class. And if some other entity is doing the writing, that's not telling you anything. So I think helping them understand so that, again, it doesn't seem like we're the big bad, adults telling them, no, you cannot use this newfangled tool. That's not the point at all. The point is they're learning. I'm not sure I agree with the statement that if they don't confess, you can't hold them accountable. I don't agree with that. There are plenty of examples here, even at APU, of students who've engaged in academic dishonesty where they never confessed and they fought to the bitter end saying, I didn't do this, but they were held accountable because, and the term in college student judicial circles and even in federal government policy is called the preponderance of evidence. So the evidence that you're looking for, and it should be multiple, it's typically multiple factors. It's not like a courtroom where it's, 50% plus, it's not like a courtroom where it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's not the standard. The standard is preponderance of evidence. So it is like 50% plus one, at least. So you're just going to need to use, as you're the first line of investigation, you're just going to need to use your wisdom and your educational knowledge about whether you think this student did plagiarize, using more traditional means or using AI. And I do like to say, I go around, because this AI stuff has really gotten us all, worked up, and it is serious. But I like to say, if I used AI to plagiarize using somebody else's work as my own, or if I cut and pasted from Wikipedia, or if I borrowed a paper that a friend of mine wrote 3 years ago in this class and I copied from that, or if I literally walked into Marshburn and pulled a book off the shelf and opened it and typed in my paper what's in the book. The medium I'm taking from is really not the point. The point is you're using somebody else's or some other entity's else's words or ideas as your own and passing it off as your own. That's plagiarism, and that's not okay in an academic environment. So it's, again, helping students understand what all those concepts are. I know when you were preparing to be a faculty member, you probably didn't think you were going to need to educate young people about plagiarism and all of its forms and what that means, but that's a part of teaching, especially those first and second year students, helping them understand how all this works. I don't know how much we're going to get into, in terms of approaching students. What you want to do is, pull any evidence together that you have that are causing you concern and ask to meet with the student. As Karen said, you can tell them what it's about or not. I have no problem letting a student know and just say, I have the AI score on this paper came up a little bit higher than I'm comfortable with. I'd like to talk to you about it. Either tell them or don't tell them, but at some point, just be open and honest about it and just say, can you help me understand why that might be? And I believe, again, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you get the paper back from something like a turnitin.com, it highlights the sections that either have been lifted from another source on the internet or AI generated. Yep. I would pull that out and both of you should look at it. Yep. And talk with them about, well, why would this pop up in that way? Yep. And then really listen to what they have to say. As Mike said, these tools are not infallible. And I know that one of the pre-workshop questions today was, what are these cases like at APU? And I did go back into our records. I had my staff go back and take a look. Let me...
So while you look, Kandy, I just verified students can only see the similarity score, but not the AI score. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
Students can see the similarity score and they can go into the detail of that the similarity report to see where their essays have been found elsewhere on the internet, but they do not see the AI score. So it's only available for the faculty. So this is where I think, again, because the tool isn't reliable enough, that's why I think it's not turned on for the students, because they would be probably freaking out if they... So
right.
So I would say maybe not knowing this now, I'm glad we had this kind of opportunity to verify. This is where I think, because you as a faculty are the only one who can see the AI score, it's where having that conversation, that doesn't have to in person, you can do a Zoom and then share, like, this is what it's showing for your paper. And that's where you can kind of use, again, as one of many data points along the way. So
and I think too, Mike, it wasn't my premise that they don't have to, or we won't punish them unless they confess. Yeah. It's from my field, and the field is really going that way. I said in my slide too, or an abundance of evidence. I think it's one of many things. For me though, I think Mike and I have coached faculty, because this is on the move and because we haven't clarified in all of our classes, to more often than not, I would suggest letting the student resubmit to clear it up for both of us, for both of our conscience, and to just make sure the learning happens. And so depending on your level of student, maybe you would adjust that, but it is hard to prove it. And I think at some point I get more nervous about like jailing an innocent criminal or punishing a student who truly did it, depending on the situation and the instinct. So it's such a human and emotional intelligence moment that I think I like to tell students, I really trust you and respect you, and I never want to lose that. You always have my trust, and can we talk about this? So it is a lot of interpersonal work to have these conversations, and it's disappointing when it happens.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be like 20 years gives me tons of experience, but truly every semester I deal with this, and almost always students do confess. I had a student last semester where, and I know Kandy, you deal with the really, and honestly, David Weeks and I had a student who chronically cheated across all the classes and was bold-faced lying to all of us, and the student was dismissed from the school. And so you get some really tough cases, but part of me is like, I'm not going to totally revamp my class for people who are bordering on like personality disorders. They're so honest.
Yeah.
Most of the time students, I'll say, hey, what is this? Explain it. And they're like, okay, I didn't write it. Like it's just like 2 seconds in. And so I'm kind of banking on the idea that all things truth will come to light. If it's not in my class, I'm going to do my due diligence to set up the accountability, to encourage, to reduce stumbling blocks for our students that make it just way too easy to cheat, and to let them know I'm watching and I care about your learning. This kind of work doesn't sound great in a catalog, but I think it works in the human moment in our classroom, on Canvas, and online classes. If we know our students, that goes a long way to being able to have the conversation in a way that is productive and honest.
Yeah, and you're right. The chronic and purposeful cheaters are few and far between. There are some out there. That's how they've gotten through college. Sometimes they get caught, sometimes they don't, but they're very rare. So I agree with Karen's approach to assume the student ran out of time, so they decided to use this, and at the first questioning they're going to crack and say, oh yes, I'm so sorry. Also, as we all know, many times students are ignorant. They don't know what they've done is not okay and is inappropriate. So it's, again, you helping them understand why it's not okay to use somebody else's work as their own. So in going back through our academic integrity records this year, and looking at cases that involve the use of AI, we've had 7 undergraduate cases, and these are cases. I'll just remind you that anytime you have a student who engages in academic dishonesty, please let us know by filling out a form that is linked off of the Provost office website. And this is so that we can keep campus records to understand what kind of academic integrity issues we have as a campus, but it is also to let us know about recidivism. So you might be thinking, well, I just want to kind of keep this in-house, just in our department. But if a student is taking courses across multiple departments, which all students do, we need to know if they're engaging in academic dishonesty across multiple departments. So please do fill. It's a very easy form to fill out. It's just letting us know. As a faculty member, you have control over what kind of consequence to issue to a student. So just by filing that form, you're not giving up any control about that. But just the numbers, we've had this year 7 undergraduate cases involving the use of AI and 6 graduate student cases. All of the cases were resolved either at the faculty member level, the department chair level, or the dean level, except 1. So that means that, of those 13 cases, 12 of those cases, the student accepted the consequences that were issued to them, except in 1 case, which did go all the way to a hearing. Karen has mentioned that you do want to be prepared to pull together evidence of what you believe is, whether it's plagiarism or inappropriate use of AI. And at the end of the day, as you think about, well, what kind of evidence do I need to collect or be clear in my own mind about, the final group that you would be talking to about that is this panel, the grievance committee panel. And that panel consists of a dean, 1 dean, and 2 faculty members and 2 students, none of whom would be in your college. So they would be from other colleges. So we have a meeting that I chair. The panel hears from the faculty member and the department chair, and then hears from the student. And then everybody leaves the meeting and the panel deliberates and comes up with a decision of whether to uphold the decision of the department or whether to, in essence, say that, no, we don't think this consequence is appropriate. The panel can also suggest another consequence, maybe a lesser consequence. And if you have questions about that process, let me know.
Okay, thank you, Kandy. I know Brianna had her hand up for a while, and I think she gave up. So but Brianna, I don't know if your question is still relevant or.
No, it was okay. I actually I was giving an example that applied a few minutes ago, but then as they kept talking about all the things that I was going to say. So, no, I went through this whole process in the spring before we had really those established processes, and I had several students that scored really high on those detectors in their discussion posts, and one in particular was so apologetic. And he was like, I don't know what happened. I'm not using ChatGPT. I don't know why it's so high. And he's like really anxious. And I'm like, it's not a big deal. We're just having a conversation. We're just having a Zoom meeting. We're just talking about this, right? But he really cared. And so in a conversation, come to find out, and this is a nursing course, right? Come to find out, he's not confident in his writing skills. So he was using Grammarly. But what he was doing was every time Grammarly gave him a recommendation, he would use it. And Grammarly isn't 100% correct. So there were times where he would cite something correctly from a source, and then Grammarly would think it should be said differently. So it would change the quotation. So if he's directly quoting, now all of a sudden he's misquoting. So his own writing was actually better in some ways, right? It may have sounded better after Grammarly was done with it, but it wasn't as accurate. So it was a great opportunity to say, hey, use these tools with caution, because, just because you're self-conscious about your writing doesn't mean you're not putting out decent work. And so I think that was a great opportunity for conversation there. And then I had another student who blew me off, didn't want to have the conversation at all. And then I had one other student that had the conversation and was like, oh, okay, well, now I know how to use this properly. And she went and redid her posts. No big deal, no harm, no foul. And so you never know what you're going to get with a student, but sometimes you find out what the need is by reaching out. And so I found that same process worked well when I didn't know what the policy was. I didn't know what we could do. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to have these conversations. And so, yeah, it worked out very much like you've been describing. So.
Yeah, perfect. Good job.
Thank you, Brianna. Okay, it's 3:03. So I know with learning sciences, it says the brain stops functioning at its optimal after about 60 minutes. So let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 3:08, and then we'll have breakout session, and then we'll have some opportunities for you to interact with your colleagues on a series of things that you can hopefully solidify the learning that you got today. So we'll come back in 5 minutes. So I'm gonna pause.
Support, and I think clarified in that last comment in the chat about like a faculty member who has strong evidence of cheating, and a program director coming back and saying, well, couldn't you let them slide or give them 50%? I personally don't have a lot of experience with that approach. What I have found is if a faculty member has strong evidence that a student has engaged in academic dishonesty, and again, just to clarify, the next layer up in our formal appeal process is not a program director, but a department chair. So it would be the faculty member who may have talked with a program director about a consequence that they were going to put in place. But the next formal level of review is at the department chair level. Typically, if the faculty member has very strong evidence of academic dishonesty, I have seen department chairs supporting the faculty member's decision. And then again, it's up to the student. If they do not feel satisfied, they can appeal to the dean of the college. The dean, just as the department chair, the dean is obligated to meet with the student either in person or online and hear their case. The student has to write a document that explains their case. The dean has to review the document, talk with the student, consider all the factors, obviously talk with the faculty member and look at the faculty member's evidence. And then the dean issues a final decision from the perspective of the school or college, whether the student will continue to be held accountable and will have to experience the consequence that's been levied. And then again, the final appeal that the student has is to the provost's office, requesting that grievance appeal committee panel, the one that I chaired, and that's where we bring in the peers and the faculty and dean from another college, and we go through the whole hearing process. And then that's a whatever the hearing panel decides is a final recommendation. In essence, it's recommending to the provost and the president that this be the final decision. Okay. And I've been in this position for 1.5 years, and I have coordinated 3 panels. So it's not a common occurrence, 3 panels. And all 3 panels have upheld the decision of the school or college.
All right. Well, thank you, Kandy, for explaining that. And I'm sure any faculty who gets into that situation will probably start interacting with you more so that you don't have to sort of know all the intricacies of the steps at this point. But yes, that's an important resource. So I'm going to share the activities that we will be doing in the breakout group. So learning science, again, this is backed by science, that if you just spend 5 to 10 minutes reflecting, interacting with somebody else about the content you just learned, it will dramatically extend your learning. Like it will make your learning sticky, meaning you will actually remember like a day from now, 2 days from now. So that's why we have a breakout group. So in the breakout group, these are kind of potential activities. You can think of something else if you want to do it in your group. It's something that's fine. But the first option is to explore the AI tools, detection tools within Canvas, and then also the Zero GPT or the GPT-0. If you have not done this, if you never sort of looked at this tool or interacted with this tool, it's probably a good time just to click through it and learn as a group how these tools work and just kind of play with it. Second option is that you maybe talk through like what it means to develop communication to inform students about AI use policy and consequences. Sometimes, it's just good to have somebody else, another colleague, to kind of say, hey, what did you do in your class? And to be learning from each other. And then the third is this, I don't know if anybody's going to do this, but develop a plan for how, like step 1, I'm going to, like, the next time I encounter something like this, here are the 3 steps I'm going to take. And then maybe develop that plan and have that readily available so that when you come across cases like this, you don't have to sort of start from scratch. Because oftentimes like I said, I get about 1 or 2 of these questions from faculty on a weekly basis about like, here's the situation, what do I do? And I almost like copy and paste every response I have, because step 1, no, make sure you check your policy. Step 2, you talk to the student. And so it's just something that it's important to have as part of your faculty arsenal in terms of how to deal with these issues. So with that said, I'm gonna open up the rooms and it will automatically give you a room assignment. So go ahead and just go there. And then Kandy, Karen, and I we'll rotate, and then we'll sort of jump through and then be able to help. So go ahead and go to your breakout room.
David doesn't have a.
I think he's probably
pretending.
Oh,
you know what? I'll move him. I'll move him there manually.
Where are you headed, guys?
Pick a number. What room do you want, Karen?
Somebody asked me a question. I was trying to find.
All right, maybe Kandy, you can go to room 1.
Okay.
Because I think it might have been Jess. I don't know who it was. It's okay. I'll do 2.
Room 2 has just 2 people.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe room 2 and 3.
Yeah, room 2 and 3 and 4 each have 2 people, and room 1 has 4 people.
Yeah. I'll try to stay in the main room here because I know sometimes people come in.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll try to monitor.
And I don't think Dave. You tried to put Dave in 4. Yeah.
Yeah. He's
okay.
I think he might be at the help desk.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go to room 1. Thanks, guys.
1 or 2? You gonna go 2?
Kandy's gonna go to 1.
Oh, okay.
I'll go to room 4 and work my way up.
Okay.
See you soon.
I'll be here.
Not the first time.
Okay. I want to make sure we end on time because I know a lot of you have other things to attend to at 3:30. So I hope the session today was helpful, and then the breakout session allowed you an opportunity to engage with the content a little bit. And so the last learning strategy that I'm using here is just to put in the chat the one most important takeaway for you. So if you can do that, just put that in the chat, that would be great, because then again, it solidifies the learning. And then once everybody does that, I will give you a couple of slides of resources, and then we'll close it out for today. So just take a 30-second or a minute just to consolidate your thoughts, and then just put in the chat what's the one takeaway, the one most important takeaway for you that you will hopefully after today's session that you will try to implement or practice. All right. For Rochelle, have discussions with students regarding expectations. Yes, very important. And then Janet, big takeaway is to initiate conversations with students to ensure understanding around AI tools in common for the participants and faculty members leading the course. Brianna, remembering that I can have support from others. Yes, when I have a student who may have active, yep, you're not alone, Brianna. And then Robert, tighten up my syllabus content. Yes, that's also, yeah, that's hopefully going forward, that every syllabus at APU should have some sort of AI policy if it doesn't currently have one, and to continually. And once you develop one, I encourage you to maybe share or ask your colleagues in your department and say, do you have one? Because I think it's always important to have, as a department wide, it's consistent. So that students who are going from course to course in your department, they don't have to sort of second guess, like, does this have a policy or does it not? And so on. All right, thank you. Portia, open discussion, and then DR. Okay, thank you so much for your, I hope those are important takeaways that you will hopefully, that will stay with you beyond today. So I want to just highlight a couple of resources. Again, we're sending out these slides and also the recording, and then also a link to a lot more resources. But these are kind of some of the tools that we discussed today, as well as the resources that we covered. If you are really into this topic and you want to learn more, here are some great books that you can read about AI. So I highly recommend them if if this is something that you want to dive into. So with that, I will stop sharing. And I just want to thank you to Karen Lang, just for your sharing and your expertise, and also thank you, Kandy, also for your sharing and your expertise. And then thank you everyone for your taking time today to join us and to learn more about AI and academic integrity. So we will hopefully, I think 3 of us can stick around for a few minutes maybe. So if there are anybody with extra comments or questions that you want to engage with us, we'll be here. But I will officially end the recording at this point.